only had 6 points going into halftime, and then they held the Huskies to only 6 points for the rest of the game after trailing by 8 going into the half. But ultimately, Syracuse comes out on top today on the backs of 2 touchdowns from Justice Ross Simmons. That includes the game winner. And how about Steve Angeli? 400 yards through the air. Jish and Nico were talking about it. First quarterback since Kyle McCord last season against UConn to throw for over 400 yards. And then Yasin Willis with the touchdown to give Syracuse the lead late in the fourth before a UConn field goal to tie things up before we went to overtime. We'll tell you more about this contest, more on Orange Overtime. But before we hear about how it went down, let's get some updates on scores from around the nation. Number 11, Illinois trounced Duke 45-19. The Fighting Illini have forced 2 Blue Devil turnovers in the red zone. Wideout Hank Beatty has 8 catches for 150 yards and a score. Second-ranked Penn State took down FIU 34-0. Nittany Lions running backs Katron Allen and Nick Singleton combined for over 210 rushing yards, with Allen at 140. In the Cyhawk game, number 16 Iowa State snuck by Iowa 16-13. Cyclone quarterback Rocco Becht had over 130 yards and a touchdown through the air, while the Hawkeyes recorded over 200 yards total on the ground. In the ACC, 17th-ranked SMU and Baylor are headed to overtime also. They're tied at 38. Mustangs quarterback Kevin Jennings has completed 15 of 20 passes for 270 yards and 2 scores. SMU looks to snap a 12-game losing streak against the Bears, the longest streak in series history. We've got radio replay when we return. You're listening to Orange Overtime on WAER.
11% of WAER's yearly funding came from federal funds. That's $175,000, and that funding is now gone. We cannot wait for you to step forward and become a member. Start a monthly donation or add a few dollars to your monthly gift. Now is the time as public media funding navigates an uncertain future. Support from you is crucial. Join us during our coalition campaign to raise back what we've lost. Give now at WAER.org.
On the next Putumayo World Music Hour,
we salute a city with a vibrant world music scene, New York. Musicians from Africa, South America, the Caribbean, and beyond all enrich the city's musical tapestry. I'm Dan Storper.
And I'm Rosalie Howarth. Join us for World Music in New York, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
The game might be over, but what's better than listening to the action once, hearing it again? Radio replay is up next on WAER.
Back in our Ostrom Avenue studios for Orange Overtime. Syracuse gets the win over UConn in overtime, 27-20. I'm your host, Max Gifford, and let's listen to how this game went down. It was a crazy one, to say the least. Syracuse finally getting the best of UConn at the end, but even with the win, the Orange were held to just 68 yards on the ground. This time around, Cuse running back Yasin Willis was determined to make UConn's run defense work early on.
Angeli claps the hands, takes the snap, handoff Willis, left side. He's got room at the 50, back to the 45, to the 40, stiff arms in, puts a shoulder down, out of bounds at the 31 of UConn. Tyrese Mills on the tackle, but a huge run for Yasin Willis. Moves the chains, brings him a 1st and 10 at the UConn 35 is where they mark him out of bounds.
And that was a lengthy first drive for the Orange, but it came to a crashing halt when they met the Huskies in the red zone.
Willis in the backfield with Angeli. Crowd hushing on this 4th and 1. It's a sneak by Dan Valori. He pushes forward towards the line to gain. Does he have enough? Marked down around the 5, UConn signaling it's their ball. And they are right. Dan Valori motioned under center, took the snap, but did not have enough on the QB sneak. The Orange turn it over on downs at the UConn 6-yard line.
A couple of red zone stops like that gave Syracuse a goose egg after the first quarter, but UConn struck first with a touchdown to open the second. So, could SU respond?
Nixon moves over to the right side. Angeli takes the snap, looks to throw, ball comes out. It's knocked out, and it's still loose. It rolls to the 30-yard line. It's picked up by UConn, and it's down at the 38, and the Huskies recover a fumble. Disaster for the Orange offense here on 4th down in the first half.
So maybe not quite the response SU wanted. It was a rock fight from both teams, or a dog fight if you were listening to Fran Brown, or you were listening to McClure remodeling Countdown to Kickoff. But UConn's offense started to heat up as the half winded down.
Vignano in the gun. Hands off Brown. Runs up outside the numbers to the left side. Plenty of green grass ahead. He's at the 20, the 10, 5. Touchdown UConn. Mel Brown explodes for a touchdown all the way from midfield. And UConn adds another. It's 13-3 Huskies with just over a minute to play here in the first half.
Any signs of Syracuse's offense were lost, but out of nowhere, a veteran face started to come alive.
Willis on Angeli's right side, takes the snap, fires it out to the left side. It's caught. Valari again, 3rd reception in a row at the 35, and extends at the 33 for an Orange first down and more. Clock running, 20 seconds.
That's one guy we haven't talked about a whole lot. How about Dan Valari? 104 yards through the air today. That is by far a career high, and SU parlayed that into a field goal to close out the half, but still entered the second down by 8. The Huskies garnered a field goal of their own to start the third quarter. That would actually be only 3 of 6 points they would get the entire second half, but Syracuse finally got its tackling in rhythm soon after.
He claps the hands twice, now takes the snap, handoff Edwards right side. He has a lane, but he's quickly met in the backfield. Huge hit from Chris Peel, the corner, coming up and making the play for a loss. Brings up a 3rd and about 20 from the UConn 6.
Fran Brown had his guys fired up coming out of the locker room after half. The Orange defense came to play, but unfortunately for Cuse quarterback Steve Angeli, so did the Huskies.
Angeli takes the snap. Pressure comes from the right side. He evades it, sidesteps for the meantime, but he is suplexed down to the turf at the 20. Byram Parham, the middle linebacker, rushes off the edge and drops Angeli for a loss of 12. 4th and a country mile on the way next.
You're probably thinking right now, where in the heck is the offense in this game? Well, you're still going to have to wait a bit longer because nothing was working for the Cuse passing attack.
Angeli in the gun. Willis to his left, 2 receivers to his right. Here's the play. Blitz comes, throw over the middle, over the head of Hornsby over the middle. It's dropped and incomplete. 4th and medium on the way next. Devin Pringle playing tight coverage yet again. Just when you think Syracuse's offense has a little bit of life, blink and you miss it. The punt unit's back out.
Right, they really had no life. I think you could have had a staring contest and you still wouldn't have thought that the Syracuse offense had any life in them because things were looking bleak for the Cuse. But just when everyone thought SU was done, Steve Angeli found a way to pull all the Syracuse fans back in.
Angeli in the gun, takes the snap, pressure from UConn, gets a throw off. Ross Simmons again, catches at the 30. He's racing down the right sideline into the end zone. Touchdown Orange. Angeli to Ross Simmons. Ross Simmons got by Chadwick and then took it all the way down the field. Green grass ahead for 30 yards. And a big touchdown for the Orange to climb back in it. They're down 17-12 with the point after try coming up. And they're going to keep the offense out there and go for 2.
Right, it really was a big touchdown, but maybe not as big as the Yasin Willis touchdown that came toward the end of that fourth quarter. But even after an unsuccessful 2-point conversion, giving the Orange a 3-point lead, all SU needed was one more stop. That's easy enough, right?
This one from 42. The snap, the hold, the kick is up. Freeman delivers. We're all squared at 20 with 1 second remaining here in the Dome.
So, to overtime we go. SU's pass offense had its ups and its downs throughout the day. Angeli had that interception, also had a couple of touchdowns like we mentioned, but there was no doubt that Steve Angeli was hitting his stride at the right time in this one.
Angeli in the gun, looks right, fires it towards the goal line. It's caught. Touchdown. Justice Ross Simmons hauls it in for the Orange right on the right pylon. 26-20 Syracuse here in the first overtime.
That's how you put your stamp on the overtime period. And after the extra point, putting SU up 27-20, UConn had one more chance to respond on offense, but could the Huskies keep the game alive?
Snap taken. Fagnano looks right, throws. It is incomplete. Syracuse holds on, and they come back. 27-20. The Orange avoids catastrophe here in the early season of 2025. Syracuse beats UConn 27-20. They were backed up all day long, and the Orange get it done to get their first win here of the season.
Syracuse completes the comeback, and they avoid me saying a laundry list of stats and dates I was going to say if this team lost. That would have been the team's first loss to UConn since 2011 and the first time they've lost to them in the Dome since 2010. And I've thought a lot about this, but it's time to give out our WAER player of the game. Could be a lot of guys it could go to. Could be Steve Angeli, 400 yards. You could give it to Yasin Willis for tying it at the end. You could even give it to Dan Villari for a career-high 104 yards. But I'm giving it to Justice Ross Simmons. 2 touchdowns, including the game winner, 5 receptions for 83 yards on the day. Justice is served, Justice Ross Simmons, and he is our WAER player of the game after Syracuse comes out victorious 27-20 in overtime over UConn to finally get in the win column for 2025. Our next broadcast is this upcoming Friday, Syracuse hosting FCS Colgate here in the JMA Wireless Dome. Syracuse a chance to get above 500 this season as well. We've got McClurg Remodeling countdown to kickoff for you at 6:30 before the game at 7, so make sure to tune into that. Maybe Syracuse wins from here on out. Who knows? After 0-1 to 1-1, aiming for 2-1 next Friday. A couple of thank yous to hand out before we get up and out of here. Our thank you to our producer, Nick Evans, our engineer, Hudson Ridley, with Alex Burstein on Radio Replay, and the entire WAER Sports Desk. Thank you guys so much for all your hard work behind the scenes on this Saturday afternoon, working overtime for this overtime contest. And speaking of which, the double overtime is coming up next with Milo Hoffman and Jake Klein. Make sure to call into them at 315-443-2011 to get your voice heard. I know you guys have takes. I've been reading social media. You guys have thoughts. Get them heard. Tell Jake and Milo about them because they want to talk to you. You can talk to them until 5. But for now, that about wraps up things for me. Let's send things over to Milo and Jake for a game that Syracuse didn't have a grip on from the start, but ultimately came out on top at the end.
You are absolutely right, Max. I mean, just a roller coaster, Jake. Personally, I saw there was absolutely no world where Syracuse was going to take this one out. I thought 0-2 was written in the stars, but Steve Angeli and company get the job done to win it 27-20 in overtime in a game that really people will probably remember for a long time in the future. A must-win, and in the end, hey, they got it done.
They did, but I have to say, I think the first 3 quarters of that game were as close to unacceptable as you can get in a game where you win. Syracuse was flat. Syracuse was lifeless. Everybody on social media, even us watching the game, were like, okay, when's Ricky Collins' time? When are you going to make the change at quarterback? I give credit to the Syracuse defense for making some adjustments after last week's loss to Tennessee, but boy, most of that game was really ugly.
A lot to fix moving forward, that's for sure for Syracuse, but 27-20, they take it over UConn to improve to 1-1 on the season. And like Max already said, we want to hear your voice, so call in at 315-443-2011. If you don't want to call, you can text us at 315-556-3929. There's so much to talk about after Syracuse takes it over UConn 27-20. And that's what we're just about ready to do because it's the double overtime and it starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Ford claps. This time he gets it. Looks to the left corner of the end zone. 1v1 ball for Meeks. He went up there and he got it. Touchdown, Syracuse.
Ford takes the snap, drops back, looking to the left, lofts it down the field, and gets it, catches it. Gain of 20, first down, Orange.
McCord in the gun, takes the snap, hands off Allen, and one-on-one with the UNLV defender. He breaks the tackle and finds the end zone. Absolute cinema in the Sin City.
And the Lows.
Ford the snap, throws it near side, it's intercepted by Pittsburgh to the 10, and he's into the end zone. Touchdown, Panthers. Rasheem Biles with a pick six to the house. The snap, the hold, the kick is up, and it's good. Emmett Kenny is the hero in Syracuse. The Cardinal walk off the Orange.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
When you have this many talented receivers, this deep of a group, someone has to be in single coverage.
Yep. It was Jackson
They
Meeks.
talked about it in Jackson Meeks in the second half, but in that sense, it was Trevor Pena. You leave Pena wide open, and you get him a great chance to make a great catch.
What did we just watch?
I don't know.
This is the third-ranked passing offense in the nation going into the game. I'm sorry, that team did not show up. They were left in the bye week. A lot of rust offensively to start this one off, and it never got better for the Orange.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the double overtime. Milo Hoffman here with Jake Klein following Syracuse football's 27-20 overtime win over UConn. That is to improve to 1-1 on the season. We've already said it a whole bunch of times. I'll say it once more. Call in at 315-443-2011. That's 315-443-2011. Or text us at 315-556-3929. The Orange, Jake, they get it done. 27-20. And I already said it. I didn't think this was going to happen, to say the least. I thought a loss, I thought an 0-2 start to the campaign was going to happen. If you were to tell me that Steve Angeli would end this game with over 400 yards, I would have called you crazy. But listen, at the end of the day, it happened, and there were a whole bunch of negatives to take away from the game. We'll get into that. But also, listen, a win is a win is a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of sitting there watching the game, and you're like waiting. Syracuse is going to get back in it. Syracuse is going to get back in it. It's coming. And then it got to a point where we're like, no, it's never going to happen. And it did.
It did, and we've already got a caller. We've got Ethan from Delaware on the line. Ethan, what do you got for us after that 27-20 victory for the Orange?
Hey, guys. First-time caller, long-time listener. I just feel like, is Jim Mora, like, the better coach than Fred Brown in college? Like, that's disgraceful. Like, Fred, like, so much fight for our Fred, and that team looked like an FCS team Syracuse did through three quarters. I don't know, I just feel like, I don't know, it just got me thinking some crazy things about this team right now after those first three quarters. So, I'm sure you guys are frustrated as well. But, I mean, Fred was out-coached for three quarters. I mean, I think that's clear after tonight's game.
Well, thank you so much, Ethan, for your call. But, I mean, Jim Moore is a coach who's had NFL experience. He's been a head coach for a while now. Fran Brown in just his second year as a head coach. I mean, I don't know if you go out there and say Jim Moore outcoached Fran Brown, and that's, like, something that no one could have imagined. Like, Jim Moore has been a guy for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, was the head coach of the Falcons for a couple of years, then the Seahawks, then UCLA for a while. He's a seasoned coach. I do think there were plenty of coaching issues in this game. I think back to that second quarter field goal attempt by Syracuse where they get Dan Villari running onto the field late with like 8 seconds left on the play clock, and they ultimately have to burn their second timeout of the half. The first drive they had to burn a timeout because they couldn't figure out the alignment of the wide receivers. So I do think there were coaching issues in this game. I don't know how important it is, whether or not Jim Mora or Fran Brown is a better football coach. Look, Syracuse won the game, and I guess if you're the Orange at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, you get the job done, but like you already said, there were tons of moments where we were all questioning the play calls, even on that 4th down and 2 when you sneak it with Dan Villari early in the first quarter. That was a questionable call in my eyes because, listen, I know Dan Villari has had experience doing things like that before, but is that the right call at that situation?
Yeah, so I had no problem with Syracuse going for that 4th down or the 4th down in the red zone, the 4th and 2 in the red zone in the second quarter. I had no problem with the decision to go for it, but I had a problem with the play call in both instances.
Right.
I think on a 4th and long 1, 4th and 2, a quarterback sneak style play with your tight end is not the go-to.
You also have a beast at running back.
Right.
And
then the second play, they go with a deep drop back for Steve Angeli where he tries to throw it almost to the end zone on a 4th and 2. Fran Brown said last week after the Tennessee game that Yasin Willis was the best player on the team.
Yeah.
Well, the best player on the team had 11 touches in this game.
That's inexcusable. I mean, how could you not get Yasin Willis the ball more? Because he was the talk of the town after that Tennessee victory.
If you can't hand Yasin Willis the ball and trust him to pick up 2 yards in a 4th down situation, in a 3rd down situation, in any situation, then you've got either a massive issue at running back, and he's not as good as he's been made out to be, or you've got a tremendous issue on the offensive line.
Do you think Yasin Willis should have been given the ball more after his stellar Week 1 performance against Tennessee? I don't know. Let us know. Call in at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929 because, it wasn't until a late game when Yasin Willis went in to score that big-time touchdown. We were like, where is he? And Will Nixon's getting the ball a whole bunch. And Will Nixon's a good back. He's a good pass-catching back. But he's not someone you want out there taking the majority of the snaps in the backfield and running up the gut.
Yeah, I felt like there was a little bit of an obsession in that game with Will Nixon.
Yeah.
I know he's the better pass-catching back than Yasin Willis is, but boy, I mean, he had a couple of bad drops today. That one on the right sideline in the second quarter where he had to jump up for it a little bit, but certainly a ball that should have been caught. I think basically what Syracuse is trying to do is they're trying to replace LaQuinn Allen, who is a great rushing running back and a great pass-catching running back, with 2 different running backs, like recreating him in the aggregate to steal a line from Moneyball. But what needs to happen is Yasin Willis needs to be the primary back. This is not a team like last year where they're going to win a lot of shootout games throwing the ball 50 times. And today they threw it 53 times.
Unbelievable.
Not going to be a recipe for success for this Syracuse team. You don't have the talent on the outside, and you don't have the talent at quarterback, in my opinion, to throw the ball 50 to 60 times a game. This should be a team that runs the ball 30 times a game.
I agree because Yasin Willis is someone who, I've said this now a couple of times, I think Yasin Willis has an NFL build. I think
agree.
he is an NFL build. I mean, 6'1", 225, someone that can steam up the middle. And you already mentioned it once. Syracuse doesn't have Kyle McCord again. We don't want to keep bringing up Kyle McCord, but it's almost hard not to. Of course, Angeli goes out there, throws for 417 yards, but I don't know if it was just me, but it didn't feel like that. No, not at all. Out of nowhere, 417 yards from Steve Angeli with 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have that fumble.
Yeah.
So now the turnovers
2 bad turnovers 2
really
weeks
bad
in a row.
And now this is becoming sort of a thing that you got to keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Is Steve Angeli's turnover problem going to continue to haunt him as the season goes along? We want to hear what you have to say about Steve Angeli and the entire offense. Call us in at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. Not the worst from Steve Angeli. Not the worst.
No,
at all.
I mean, he certainly turned it on at the end of the game when he absolutely needed to. I thought Dan Villari was fantastic today, really for the first time as a true tight end. They used him in vertical situations, and I thought he delivered a lot. Found some holes in zones, got open. I was impressed by him, and then Justice Ross Simmons was tremendous as well. I mean, he totally changed the dynamic of the game with that long touchdown that finally put Syracuse on the board in the second half after it felt like Syracuse could not get anything going. That was the period in the third quarter before that Justice Ross Simmons touchdown where it was like, all right, this is really ugly. They're going to lose this game. where is Ricky Collins?
I mean, it's a valid question because Ricky Collins is someone that's on the bench right now, and he has a lot of mobility coming off the bench. He's someone that doesn't necessarily, Jake, have to take all the snaps. You can use him as sort of a dynamic guy who comes in and he can run the ball for a couple plays. He can do some, QB run pass option type plays where you kind of keep the defense on their toes because Steve Angeli just doesn't really bring that to the table at all.
Midway through the third quarter, I was certain that Steve Angeli's position as Syracuse's starting quarterback was, over the course of the next week, going into the Colgate game, going to be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And I think he saved himself from that position in the last couple of minutes of regulation and overtime.
But also, you look at 417 yards, some people say, oh, well, Steve Angeli's got the position locked up for the entirety of the season, but the 417 yards might be a little bit misleading. We've got another caller, Al from Syracuse. Al, what do you got for us? Syracuse takes it 27-20 over UConn in week number 2.
Hey, guys. So before the game, if someone told you we won 27-20, you wouldn't be happy, but you'd be like, hey, UConn's a pretty tough team, whatever. I think that's just the way it is in college football now. You got a lot of new kids every year. You're going to have some scatterbrain things sometimes. Maybe the power teams don't as much because they have more people coming back every year. I don't know, but that's college football now. Let's take the win and be happy.
Al, I somewhat agree with you, but is Syracuse not one of the power teams? Is that not the goal? Is that not the aspiration for Syracuse? Or are we just going to do the whole woe is me thing where Syracuse, we're never going to be that good?
Well, I'll make an analogy. I was a teacher in the city school district in Syracuse for 30 years, and I found that we often screwed up by trying to do too much, not just accepting what we were. We would try to get 100% graduation instead of bring the 50% graduation up to 70%. And I'm sorry to say it, but SU might not be a top 10 football team in the country. So,
no, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Definitely not a top 10 team, Al. But Al, I have a question. As a Syracuse fan, you're putting a ceiling on this sort of fandom of being a Syracuse football fan. Are you okay with this? Like, you're saying this is it. This is the situation.
Look, I'm fine with it, and I'll tell you why. We got one of arguably the hardest schedule in the country this year. Anyone that thought we were going to get 10 wins again, you're smoking something. Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, but let's be realistic, okay? The other thing is, we get 10 wins this year, guess who ain't going to be our coach next year? Because that dude will be coaching an SEC team, okay? So let's try and get bowl eligible. Let's take every win as we can, try to get better. That quarterback hung in there. You got the snot kicked out of him, but he hung in there. There's, we got a lot to clean up. But, it's not the end of the world. We got the win. Let's try to go steal one of those next 4 away games.
Yeah, I agree with Al, and thank you, Al, for calling in. Anyone else who wants to call in is encouraged to do so at 315-443-2011. Look, I agree with Al. If we want to pull back and go big picture for a minute. First of all, the old cliche, a win's a win, totally reigns true here. And that is a good win for Syracuse considering how they looked for the first 3 quarters, which, as we've discussed, was dismal. And I agree that the ceiling, the goal, the hope for Syracuse fans in 2025 should not be another 10-3 season.
100%.
But on a longer-term basis, you have to have higher expectations than let's try to get bowl eligible.
Yeah.
Let's beat UConn by 1 score in double overtime.
It's just becoming so stagnant. It's becoming, all right, you have such a good year, but now does that even mean much? Because you just divert back to a team that, like you're saying, just make a bowl. Just make a bowl. Just make the Pinstripe Bowl again. Like, standards should be a little. I hate the Pinstripe Bowl too, and standards should be a little bit higher as Syracuse football fans. And Fran Brown's trying to do that. We have to credit Fran Brown, of course. He's coming over here now in his 2nd year, and he's definitely changed the culture as the head coach of Syracuse football. But the standards are just naturally not that high right now, and some things have simply just got to change.
Well, I'm looking at social media right now, Milo. Fran Brown is certainly trying to enforce the standard now. He has his team running sprints on the field in the dome right now after the game.
Wow.
That is awesome.
I don't know if have you seen that?
Not in Division I FBS Power 5 college football.
I was going to say, this is something that I did in U12.
Yeah.
But, I mean, listen, but this is something Fran Brown, we expect him to do. This is right up Fran Brown's alley.
I love that.
It's right up his alley, though. He's an OG coach. He's someone who kind of has an OG mentality in a way, and this is about as old school of a thing that you could possibly do in front of the students who are still trickling out of the stands.
And the fact is, you're going to have a lot of certainly national college football fans who did not watch this game.
Yeah.
But overall, Syracuse fans as well, who are going to kind of brush past a lot of what went disastrously wrong in this game because they played well for the final 5 minutes of regulation and they played well in overtime.
There were tons of
Fran Brown is not letting the first 3.5 quarters of that game go by the wayside.
And that's a statement because he's doing this. Obviously, Syracuse takes it 27-20 over UConn after a win. And that's not normal.
Oh, yeah.
That's not normal to put your team out there and make your team do sprints on the field after that win. We want to hear your thoughts on the Syracuse football win, 27-20 over UConn in overtime. Call in at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. And listen, Steve Angeli went out there. He threw for over 417 yards. Dan Villari had 104 yards, a career high on the receiving end for Dan Villari.
I really cannot believe Steve Angeli finished with a stat line like that.
I mean, it's a very, very Kyle McCord-like stat line.
Yeah.
It looks like a Kyle McCord.
He just does not elicit the confidence that Kyle McCord did. Like, he looks so... I don't know if it's nervous or
I wouldn't say nervous.
He's just so hesitant.
He's a little shaky.
Yeah.
He's bouncing in the pocket. And you can't really blame him, Jake, because, I mean, you're sacked 5 times in week number 1. I would be on my toes. I mean, you got UConn Huskies and Tennessee Volunteers coming at you for the first 2 weeks of the season. I wouldn't be very comfortable in the backfield. So is it on the O-line, or is this more of a Steve Angeli problem?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Not to cop out from your question there.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some brutal moments from the offensive line in this game. The sack on Angeli where they just let a free rusher through completely untouched. And I actually thought the hit that he took on that play set him back like a full quarter. He didn't look himself really after that sack until the Justice Ross Simmons long touchdown pass, pretty much. I thought he made some poor decisions. I mean, the interception he threw was awful.
Yeah.
Threw it right into double coverage. Tried for a receiver on the sideline when there was a defensive back in front of him and a defensive back behind the guy. So I don't know what that throw was after a not great interception against Tennessee.
It also fully limits you when you're not comfortable running the ball.
Yeah.
Because
I do think that is a huge thing. Even though Kyle McCord was not fast, and nobody said Kyle McCord was anything close to an elite rushing quarterback, but he absolutely would take off and run when he wanted to and when he thought he needed to. Angeli, ran once today?
Yeah. It was successful. But he only ran once. And that's
he's got to be able to get away from the pressure a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put it all on Angeli, but yeah, there are certain things that he's got to do better. We've got another caller on the line. We've got Lauren from Syracuse. Lauren, what do you got for us after that Syracuse overtime win?
Yes, hi guys. It's I was going to call last week. I ran out of time with the game, but I was kind of disappointed last week with the defense because I didn't think the defense, to be honest with you, with the last year was all that great. You know, the offense with McCord basically won the season, and I was disappointed in. I thought maybe we'd have some improvement, and it didn't seem to be the case last week. But with this week with the game, it's more. I'm leaning towards the offensive. I think there may be a problem with the offensive line. In that first quarter, we had 3 opportunities on short runs, and we can't make a yard or two.
Yeah.
That to me is kind of a red flag right there. What do you guys think on that?
No, I totally agree with you. I said earlier in the show, and I completely agree with you, on those fourth and short, third and short situations, the fact that Syracuse does not trust its big-bodied, supposed bruiser of a running back, Yasin Willis, to pick up a yard or two is totally a red flag. I completely agree.
Yeah, just a couple other things, too, I just wanted to say with you. First of all, I didn't get to watch the game on TV. Love listening to you guys with the radio. I really appreciate that.
We appreciate that.
But the couple things were, the one play when it was forced right towards the end of the game, long, and the quarterback threw the long pass for the completion. It kind of reminded me of that fourth down play with Stanford last year.
Totally.
Where you would hope that the defense could, I don't know. I know it's hard, but do something to prevent that from happening.
Definitely agree with you. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your calling into the double overtime after Syracuse takes it 27-20 over UConn in overtime. We've got a text from Dave on the tarmac in Los Angeles. Do we think UConn is just much better than we gave them credit for?
I think in general, people did not give UConn enough credit. I mean, what that program has become under Jim Mora is something it has not been in a decade.
Yeah.
The second edition of the Randy Edsall era, the Bob Diaco era for UConn were tremendously ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people still kind of have that in their head, like UConn is one of the worst FBS teams. No. 9-4, beat North Carolina in the bowl game last year. Like, I don't know why people weren't giving UConn credit.
I agree.
They're good.
Maybe
Fran Brown very clearly knew that UConn was good.
It could be the fact that the basketball team is just so good it kind of takes over all the headlines. We've got another caller. Stanley from Solvay is on the phone. Stanley, what do you got for us after Syracuse's Week 2 win?
Okay, hey there. Well, here's what I think. Obviously, now we get Fran Brown. Last year was just an amazing year. It was really uplifting, and we knew that we were going to lose probably one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever had in college football at the time. So we knew that we were going to have that. But don't we know and don't we think that Fran Brown is the number one recruiter in college football? So we have him, and but we all expected all these great players right now. So when we played Tennessee and got completely, I mean, we had a few good things, but they blew us out, okay? And they're a 24 ranked team. So right when we saw that, we're like, oh my God, we took a big step backward.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're thinking, well, we're going to come into UConn and blow UConn. They're just, you know what?
Did you think that? Did you think they were going to blow UConn out?
No, well, people not blow them out, but it was almost like everybody thought, we should just win this game.
Right.
But UConn's a good team.
Yeah.
Yep,
And the
totally
game last
agree.
year should have told us that.
Can I just say this? Here's what I'm thinking. Right now, I saw on Fran, and I like Fran. And I got to tell you what, they were playing. He's a guy that I'm like that. I was giving up. I'm like, but no, he never gives up, and that's what's really good about Fran Brown, other than being a great recruiter. So let's see how much his recruiting comes. Yes, we all want more Kyle McCords and better men on the lines, in the defense and the offensive line. We want those guys right now. I don't know if we have those guys, but that's might take a few years to build that up. But I got to give credit, and I was pretty down on this team. But when they came back and won this game, I'm pretty back in the game. And I got to say it's a good win. And then you guys can analyze football and do whatever you want with it. But I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not be? Thank you so much, Dan, for the call from Solvay. And he's right. Fran Brown's trying to build a culture, and he's done that. And listen, people counted him out. People counted Syracuse out. Somehow SU takes out the win.
Sprints.
He's got him running sprints after a win. And we've got another call. We've got Doug from Syracuse. No, we don't have Doug from Syracuse. Doug has left us, unfortunately. But that's okay because we still got you right here. Jake Klein, Milo Hoffman with you on the double overtime after Syracuse takes it 27-20 over UConn in week number 2 to go 1-1 on the season. Oh, wait, we have Doug back on the phone. Doug from Syracuse is back, and we could not be happier to talk to you, Doug. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Good. What do you got for us?
Cool. So, yeah, one thing I noticed from this game, like early on in the first half, I totally agree with you guys. Yassine Willis needs to get the ball more.
Oh, yeah.
And so does Jonte Cook. I really couldn't understand why they weren't targeting him. I think he had like one target, maybe two in the first half. Like, these are the guys that we have now. I mean, we lost over 3,500 yards of offense. Like, you got to feed the guys, and those are the guys. So, you know, and also, like, the offense was just sloppy in the first half. Like, it seemed like they weren't getting the play calls in. Saw receivers with their palms up a lot of the times, looking at the sideline. It just didn't feel smooth in the first half.
Yeah, and I do attribute a lot of that, Doug, to the fact that this is only, game number 15 for Fran Brown running a program?
He's got a whole bunch of new
I
players.
think because he went 10-3 last year, it's so easy to forget that, but that stuff has got to be figured out. We talked earlier about the first field goal attempt for Syracuse where they had to burn a timeout because Dan Villari was coming onto the field with 8 seconds left on the play clock. Like, these are things that cannot happen.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, Fran, he's a big accountability guy. I didn't hear his post-game remarks yet, but I did see him make the team run sprints after the game, so I know he's not happy.
Yeah,
and
Doug,
he's
what do you think about that?
Kicking himself a little bit too. So I think we'll get this fixed. We're gonna be 2-1 going into Clemson. Let's go shock the world.
Love it.
All right. So that means Syracuse takes a win against Colgate in week number 3. But in week number 2, Syracuse won it 27-20 over UConn in overtime. It's the double overtime that you're listening to right now, and we are up against our first break, but we've still got a whole lot to talk about, including talking to our reporter, Dan Papillo, who is inside the dome, and he's got a whole lot for us. You're listening to the double overtime. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Always keeping you up to date, WAER is supported by Hearth Cabinets and More. Located on Buckley Road West in Liverpool, Hearth Cabinets and More showroom features gas and wood stoves, fireplaces, and inserts from Vermont Castings, Heat and Glow, and Majestic. Also offering a variety of cabinetry from Waypoint Living Spaces and Omega that can help transform empty space in your home into usable and functional storage. Learn more at hearthcabinetsandmore.com.
NewsHour from the BBC.
Understand what's happening.
With news.
What's going on?
Heat waves, cyclones, storms, floods.
Increasingly unpredictable weather events.
Interviews.
2024 is the hottest year on record.
This is an uncharted situation.
And analysis of the day's global events.
In the Middle East, it's very difficult to be shocked nowadays.
That's NewsHour from the BBC.
Weekdays after morning edition at 9 on WAER, your local NPR station.
Snap taken. Vignano looks right, scans middle. Pressure taken. Vignano's taken down. Kevin Jobity Jr. with the first sack of the season for Syracuse. 4th down, UConn.
Syracuse takes it over UConn 27-20 in overtime. We're breaking it all down here on the double overtime with Milo Hoffman. I'm Jake Klein, and we are joined by our reporter, Dan Papillo, who was in the Dome for a sneaky good game. Syracuse and UConn go into overtime. If you want to get in on the conversation, you can do that by calling in 315-443-2011. That's 315-443-2011. Or you can text us, 315-556-3929. Dan, we were just talking about this as like tale of two games for Syracuse, with the first game being 3.5 quarters long and looking really ugly, and then the last 5 minutes of regulation / overtime looking pretty good.
Yeah, you said sneaky good game off the jump. I don't know if that's the word I would use to describe
Why not?
it. I think Syracuse might have played a sneaky good quarter and a half.
Yeah.
That was a little bit ridiculous. I mean, you look at the way that this game played out. You had 5 3-and-out drives by Steve Angeli in the first 3 quarters. And then all of a sudden, like that, it took one splash play to Justice Ross Simmons for a touchdown, and then the offense just magically clicked.
Right.
I mean, that's just football, obviously.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. But it was absolutely ridiculous. The fans were calling for his head. The boos were
Did
loud.
you hear it? How loud were those boos?
They got louder and louder after every incompletion. At the end of drives, it was pretty.
It was
loud.
every play.
Yeah.
We Jake and I were like, I think they're booing after every single play for like a 5 to 6 minute stretch there.
At what point did it go into your mind like, okay, it might be Ricky Collins' time?
It was like the middle of the second quarter.
All right.
And did you seriously think that?
I thought to myself that it would make sense to bring Ricky Collins out to start the second half.
me too.
It didn't obviously happen, and after the game, Fran Brown was very confident in that Steve Angeli's the guy. In fact, he said he's married to Steve Angeli.
Yeah, wow.
Somebody asked about Ricky Collins possibly coming into the game, and Fran Brown's response was, Steve's our guy. I didn't think about Ricky. I think it's pretty messed up that you even asked that question.
Right. But as Fran Brown, I don't really know how you say we didn't even think about Ricky.
Well,
it didn't even cross our mind once.
I'm sure that is not true.
That can't not be
I'm
true.
almost positive that's not true.
Well, the quote was actually, I'll read it to you because I wrote it down. It was so interesting. I think about him all the time, but not putting him in the game, is what he said about Ricky Collins.
Okay.
He thinks about him all the time. There's nothing wrong with that.
I would think he thinks about all of his players all the time. I mean, he's their coach, right? I mean, he that's almost Fran Brown's job to make sure everything's okay. We were talking a little bit about the miscommunication there in the first quarter. It seems like the offense was all over the place. Did you see the sideline at all get rattled at all? Because wide receivers had their hands up, eyes wide, didn't know what was happening. Was it like raucous on the sideline before plays?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say raucous. It happened a little bit towards the end of the game, actually on the defensive end with the big timeout on second down in overtime, which I'm sure you guys might have talked about already, where Fran Brown ran down the sideline to get that timeout off just after the incompletion to end the game. So there was a little bit of hesitation on the sideline, but Fran Brown was very vocal. There were a lot of big team meetings on the sideline, it seemed like. After a big drive, after Syracuse would go 3 and out, which seemed like every drive, he would gather everybody around and he'd have something to say. And I guess something must have clicked at some point because things turned around.
I thought the Syracuse defense especially played pretty well, especially after it seemed like that was the big question mark. Fran Brown said after Tennessee, we've got to fix the tackling. I'm going to fix it. Obviously, 45 points for Tennessee in that game. I don't know what your guys' thoughts were, but to me, like, on the list of issues from this game, defense is not very high up.
Absolutely, and I posted it on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. If you're not following, I don't know what you're doing. You missed out on some great content today. But after the game, I had tweeted, the MVPs of this game was the defense. The defense kept Syracuse in this game throughout the third quarter especially, I noticed. They were on it. It seemed, UConn was playing a solid game, I'd say, on both sides of the ball, but they didn't really impress. I wouldn't say Joe Fagnano really impressed on either side of the ball. Syracuse's defense kept the team in it despite Angeli's struggles, and that's huge in a game like this because obviously it led to Syracuse finding a way to win.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, but I look at the box score and still only 1 sack. You still only get to Joe Fagnano once.
I do think that is,
and that's a problem.
I do think that's a huge issue for Syracuse because they blitzed against Tennessee, and I haven't seen the Pro Football Focus numbers yet, which will come out tomorrow or Monday from this game. But against Tennessee, they blitzed almost more than any team in the country and did not sack one time in the Tennessee game.
You can't win many games
and
like
one
that.
Today.
Because pressure starts everything.
If they're going to not get to the quarterback, they need to stop blitzing so much.
Right, exactly.
I think both Syracuse lines were very disappointing today, both the offensive and the defensive line. Because we talked a lot about it after the Tennessee game where you got bullied in the trenches. And in that game, you had the excuse, right? You could say, it's Tennessee. That's an SEC powerhouse. There's zero excuse today.
Yeah.
There's zero.
Especially when one of the UConn offensive linemen is a guy who transferred from Syracuse after he didn't have an opportunity to play.
Yeah, maybe you should know how to beat that guy. Just saying. I will say, though, that one sack by Kevin Jovity was pretty timely. It was a big third down sack to get them off the field before the 2-minute warning of this first half. But still, you're right. One sack is not enough. But everything else that the Syracuse defense did today, it might not look pretty on paper, but they did the little things right.
And I know one thing looked pretty was Justice Ross Simmons' touchdown in overtime. I mean, he held on to that with what seemed like his fingertips at the end there. And we've talked about Justice Ross
I thought
Simmons
he
a bit
totally
on this
changed
field.
the game.
Completely changed the game. Someone who you expected a lot from in week number 1. You didn't get it out of him. It was more of a Jonte Cook game. But, Dan, what'd you see out of Justice Ross Simmons and even Darryl Gill Jr., who was involved early in the game?
I think what happened was in the second half, the offense got a little bit more simplified, which was nice and was huge for Steve Angeli because in the beginning, you talked about all the miscommunication. There wasn't a whole lot going on. It seemed like he was kind of lost in the pocket. The pocket was collapsing a lot, had to scramble
I think his
for
pocket
his life.
presence overall has not been great.
No, I 100% agree with that. But I think what happened in the second half was you saw a lot more of scheming players open. And I thought that was big for Steve Angeli to get his confidence back. And then you have a guy like Justice Ross Simmons who can go beat somebody down the field, had that big splash play for 40 yards, or I believe Darryl Gill also had one to move the sticks. Then you get that confidence booster, and those guys get open more because then the defense has to think about them a little bit more.
How much did the vibes change in the Dome after the first Justice Ross Simmons touchdown, the long one?
That was it. That brought the crowd back in it because the crowd was so out of it. And funny enough, I had tweeted about this as well. There was a "We Want Collins" chant in the lower bowl right in front of the press box, right about on the play, maybe 10 seconds before the Justice Ross Simmons touchdown.
Wow.
If that's not,
which was a great throw, by the way.
That's not just how fickle football fans are. That's just how it goes.
I mean, but how could you blame him? How could you blame him? I mean, it was such a disappointment.
In the same camp.
Yeah, it was such a disappointment for Syracuse. And Jake and I already said it. We thought SU was going to be 0-2, but this was a must-win for SU. This is a must-win because we see the schedule. It's one of the harder schedules in all of the nation. So it's a good thing Syracuse won. You have Colgate coming up next week. But, Dan, if SU lost this game, I don't know how many games SU would have won all season long.
If SU lost this game, I think the JMA Wireless Dome might have burned down. The fans were not happy. And if things did not go Syracuse's way there, things just would not have been great for this team. If you were 0-2 going into Colgate compared to 1-1, you would feel like the season's already over, which is kind of what to your point. There's not a lot of easy wins on this schedule, and you could argue that.
I mean, if UConn wasn't an easy win, are there any easy wins on the schedule?
I think Colgate is the only easy win. This UConn program is good.
I agree.
I just don't think that when you look at everybody else and you look at everything else on the schedule, you see UConn in your home opener and you say that's a win.
Yes, 100%.
We've already heard it from Doug.
The fact that it took that to beat them?
Yeah, that's the concerning part.
But you look at last year, and you look at Kyle McCord and LaQuinn Allen and Aronde Gadsden.
I think everybody took all those people for granted.
Yes, I agree, but that was also only a one-possession game. It was also only one-possession game, so you switch out Angeli for McCord, it's still just a one-possession game. They actually win by the same margin.
I think the biggest takeaway from a game like this, and I'm happy that you mentioned last season, because people need to understand that 2024 Syracuse football was such an anomaly. This is what Syracuse football is. This is what it's been for the past 10 years. This is what's going to be for the next few years. You bring in Fran Brown, you're building the program back, you're taking the right steps, but that's going to take time. Right now, this is the same Syracuse football team that you probably had in 2023.
Yeah.
You've got a point.
I agree. I mean, you said it. 2024 was an anomaly. That last time they had that record was 6 years before that in 2018. So I do for the most part agree with you that Syracuse is only going to have like a 10, 11 win season like every 5 to 8 years. I agree. But I think what you're hoping for if you're a Syracuse fan is that Fran Brown can elevate the baseline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the last couple of years of the Dino Babers era, the baseline was like, okay, they're going to win 5 games, maybe 6 games, maybe 7 games, and maybe get a bowl. But the baseline is 5 to 7. I think the hope, if you're a Syracuse fan, is that in the next year or two, Fran Brown can get that baseline up to Syracuse is a baseline 7-win team.
But that's hard to do.
With this schedule, totally.
Very hard to do with this schedule. And it's funny you mentioned Babers because there was a tweet that I saw today that said, this is the Dino Babers era all over again.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I'm curious your guys' thoughts.
I mean, that's a whole era. This was one game. I don't think it's fair to say the Dino Babers era is back because, listen, it's the Fran Brown era. We saw Fran Brown have success. In Fran Brown's career as the Syracuse football coach, he's 11-4 I mean, that's a very good record.
And I understand why an angry fan whose team is trailing UConn by 2 scores in the third quarter would say something like that, especially given some of the mental errors and lack of preparedness that we saw. A couple of our callers have mentioned something that we saw also, which was that you had receivers shuffling around, palms to the sky, what's going on, which is not good and is certainly, I think, a coaching issue. But there are dozens of reasons why the Fran Brown era is not the Dino Babers era, starting with 10 wins in year 1, which it took Dino Babers several years to get to a 10-win season. And then also the fact that, totally unrelated to anything that happens on the field, is that Fran Brown gets much better recruits than Dino Babers ever did.
Also, does Dino Babers ever make his players run sprints after the game after a win?
That was unbelievable. I know you guys already mentioned it, but I was packing up, getting ready to make it back down to the presser to go hear what Fran Brown had to say. And I looked up and I saw the players running sprints in the end zone. I'm like, are we serious? Is this Miracle on Ice? What are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, but...
Again!
That is a great scene.
But is it bad? No, it's great. It's great. I mean, Jake already talked about how much he loves it. I don't think Dino Babers would have done that. Fran Brown's trying to change the culture, and he's changing the culture. He's changing the culture. There's a bottom line. That's what he's doing. It might not look pretty, but he's doing his best, and you can only blame him so much because he has players who are starting at 17 years old, players who've got no experience on the defensive and offensive side of things. There's only so much that Fran Brown can do to affect the actual game.
You know what that is right there, Milo?
What is it?
Accountability. Dart.
You're 1/4 of Dart.
You're a quarter of Dart right there. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Syracuse team didn't deserve to run sprints after that game.
No, I think they
won the
certainly
game, but it was
deserved
very ugly.
You didn't think they did?
No, I think they did.
Okay, yes.
They
okay.
very
I think
much
we
did.
all. I hope we all agree
so.
on that.
There is a lot more negatives to take away from a game like this than positives.
Yep.
100%.
But
and
I do think the positive is such a big one. They were playing about as bad as they could have played.
Yeah.
And they made it happen. I do think there's something to that. If you want to get in on the conversation, you can let us know. 315-443-2011 is the number to call. That's 315-443-2011. You can also text us 315-556-3929. Jake Klein and Milo Hoffman with our reporter Dan Papillo breaking down Syracuse's 27-20 overtime win over UConn in the Dome. And we do have a text, another tarmac text.
Wow.
Our second
People
tarmac
are on the
text
move.
of the day.
You know how bored people get on tarmacs? I get it.
Maybe the rain is delays. I don't know.
I think it's a great way to kill time on the tarmac.
100%.
Than
Listen
double
to the
overtime.
double overtime. This is Jeff, who is on the tarmac in Denver.
Okay.
He says, happy for the win. Good defensive adjustments. I think we all agree.
Yes.
Offense got into a rhythm once they picked up the tempo a bit. Did you sense there was a tempo aspect to it?
Yeah, I think that came down to what I was talking about earlier a little bit of simplifying the offense. You know, it seemed like Steve Angeli was kind of following the Kyle McCord mold, just a touch where take the snap, maybe a second 3-step drop and a quick throw.
Yeah.
I think that was the recipe for success for Angeli. Having too much time in the pocket, that's how you mask a struggling offensive line.
He holds the ball so long sometimes.
And it was also, too, that was very worrisome because there were multiple times in this game where UConn had unblocked rushers get to Angeli, which is absolutely terrifying.
How could you blame him for not being comfortable? But another thing that tempo offense also does is it rattles the defense. The defense doesn't get set. The frontline players don't get up to the line in time, so that means that Steve Angeli is, of course, going to have more time to set his feet and throw downfield and make a good on-target throw, and you're also just not thinking as much. You have a play, you run it, it's not all this scramble.
The 2-minute drill that Angeli ran at the end of the game there to take the lead was probably the most comfortable we've seen him so
Totally
far.
agree.
I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
And I think all across football, up to the NFL, I think you see this all the time. When teams have to go before halftime or before the end of a game, offenses are far more effective when they have to go.
Absolutely.
It's bizarre to me that teams don't play with that same sense of urgency.
I think the same thing. Where was this the entire game?
I think the same thing with defenses sometime on the opposite, where it's you see the team's worst defense when it doesn't matter. Why do they just give up?
Yeah.
Never makes any sense.
So I would like to see Syracuse try to get into that tempo, get into that rhythm a little bit more. I thought Dan Villari was the key to unlocking that tempo. You said they schemed a couple of guys open. I thought he was probably the best example of that.
Absolutely.
When Angeli hit him up the left seam right towards the end of regulation there, I thought that combined with the long Justice Ross Simmons touchdown were like, all right, they've got something here, and they did.
Dan Villari is probably one of your most versatile playmakers that you have in this offense.
Former quarterback.
Don't get me started on putting in a quarterback. I know you guys talked about it before I got on here, but putting him in on 4th and 2 was
Did you like the call to go for it, though?
I loved the play call.
Even though in hindsight, had you just kicked the 2 field goals, you would have won in regulation?
I misspoke. I loved the idea of going for it. I hated the play.
So you like the call, not the play call.
Yes, that's what I was going for.
Okay.
Yes.
So what would you have rathered?
Give the ball to Yasin Willis.
Completely agree.
Do anything else.
Yeah, you got 6-1.
Why is Dan Villari? That is Dino Babers-esque. That was
Agreed.
a Dino Babers specialty right there.
It's true.
He ran a full game with Dan Villari at Wildcat quarterback.
Yeah.
Why is Dan Villari still getting reps at Wildcat quarterback? No sense.
And it makes you shake your head even more because then you look at Dan Villari and how successful he was on the receiving end of things today. I mean, he goes over 100 yards. He started out really hot, and every quarterback needs a good tight end. Like, that's been proven time and time again. McCord had Aronde Gadsden. Now, hopefully, Steve Angeli has Dan Villari, also a captain on the team, someone who's been here for a while. It's almost like there's no option but for Dan Villari to show up, and he went for over 50 yards in week number 1 against Tennessee. Sure, that's fine. But this is an impact play from Dan Villari, and that's almost a necessity now going forward.
Yeah, I was impressed because, like I said earlier, that was the first time he has truly had the opportunity to be the number 1 downfield receiving tight end in a game, and I thought he looked good. I want to go big picture here before we part ways with Dan and get to our final words. Jeff on the tarmac in Denver also asked us, do we have any insight into how Syracuse ended up with this terrible schedule? Part of it is just, of course, the rotation of how the ACC schedule works. And, I mean, you really never know. Like, these schedules are set so far in advance, you never really know who's going to be good and who's not. But, like, you never would have expected Florida State last year to be a team that you wanted to have on your schedule. So, to some degree, it's random. And then you pair the fact that they've got Notre Dame this year, which is perennially going to be a tough game, and then Tennessee, which is perennially going to be a tough game. So, you happen to have a tough ACC schedule, and you've scheduled 2 really tough non-con games. We all said just a couple of minutes ago that other than Colgate, there is no easy win on the schedule this year.
I agree.
So my question to you guys is, does that mean that the floor for Syracuse football is 2-10?
That's not. I don't think that's realistic because I would still probably take Syracuse over Boston College. And I understand that if some people are saying, oh, that's not an easy win, of course it's not an easy win. But I think Syracuse takes it over Boston College. Now, the other games I'm not so sure about, to say the least. And also, I just want to say one thing really fast. I love how Jeff phrased it as a terrible schedule. Not a hard schedule, a terrible schedule. Yeah.
Well, it's fun if you're following the team around and going to all the road trips.
It clearly is. He's on the tarmac.
I actually don't disagree with that, Jake.
Floor is 2-10?
The floor being 2-10.
Wow.
But I will say I hate having these conversations.
The floors and the ceilings?
Yes, because it's college football.
Yeah.
It's so random.
Yep.
Any given Saturday, anything could change.
We thought Syracuse was losing today.
Exactly. Anything could happen. Syracuse could go lose to Colgate next week. It's very possible. And then go beat Clemson at Memorial State. Anything could happen.
Wild.
Anything could happen in college football. But to say that the floor is 2 wins is not ridiculous. I wouldn't say I agree with it per se, but it's not like, oh, that's an absurd thing to say.
I think the floor is 2 wins.
Because the floor of the opponents is high.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's the case. Even
it's
the Pits,
you
the Pits
had
of the
this,
world are
everybody
good.
had this marked on the schedule as UConn is an easy win. And I think we can all agree after that game, after watching that game, there are no easy wins but maybe Colgate next week. So my take, and having just talked to you guys, I think we can all agree Syracuse did well to get a win. And what they did in the final 5 minutes of regulation and in overtime was impressive. But that was ugly for 3.5 quarters.
Well said.
And you need character. And Syracuse did build character for sure in this UConn win.
Yep.
And listen, those types of character building wins will pull you forward in close games down the stretch, because now SU builds that, the brick of being able to win games that are close down the line. It's a big thing to have. We've done this before. We've gotten it done, and we can do it again now in the future.
I just think things might look a little different if you're facing an ACC powerhouse like Clemson and you're down late.
I would agree.
Compared to UConn.
Yep, totally agree. All right, that's Dan Papillo, our reporter who was in the Dome for Syracuse's 27-20 overtime win over UConn to go to 1-1 on the season. Dan, thank you for joining us on the Double Overtime.
Thanks for having me.
All right. It is final word time, Milo. Syracuse beats UConn 27-20 in overtime, and your final thought is?
Syracuse, as a football program and as a team, needs to be more mature, because we've talked about it already today, and we're going to talk about it once again. There were far, far, far too many times when the Orange didn't know what was happening on the offensive side. Players had their hands up. Steve Angeli was gesturing towards the sidelines, being like, what play are we going to call on this crucial fourth down? That's inexcusable. That's the baseline of a football team, of a football program. And Fran Brown will probably say it. They need to know what's happening, and it's everyone's job to know what's happening on the field. And there were way too many times today when I saw Syracuse not knowing what's going on, not knowing what play is going to be drawn up on crucial plays, and that's not going to fly. Sure, it's going to fly against UConn. Sure, maybe it's going to fly against a Colgate. But after that, we've already talked about the schedule enough. Everyone knows how hard it's going to be. The worst thing you could do is hurt yourself. And not being mature is hurting yourself. That's the epitome of hurting yourself. So clean it up, know what play's being called, everyone get set, limit the penalties, and at least you're giving yourself a better chance at picking up victories against higher echelon teams like the Clemsons of the world, like the Notre Dames of the world, because it's already going to be hard enough. Don't make it harder on yourself. That's for sure.
I agree. And I think luckily for Syracuse, they did clean it up in this game. They did come away with the win. They did look pretty mature in those final, like I've been saying, 5+ minutes of overtime or of regulation, and then in overtime. This game, as we discussed, prompted questions for Fran Brown about the quarterback and prompted questions for us about the quarterback. And my final word is that next week against Colgate in the Dome, Ricky Collins Jr. needs to play a full quarter. You have to look yourself in the mirror, and there were a lot of people who said Steve Angeli was great against Tennessee, even though they lost, and he pulls off the comeback here today. But you have got to look yourself in the mirror if you're Syracuse and ask yourself, has he really played well over the first 2 games? I think anybody who does that will come to the conclusion that the answer is no. And the final opportunity on the whole schedule for Syracuse to find out in a low-stakes atmosphere what they have in Ricky Collins in a game situation is next week against Colgate. If you don't do it next week, you cannot do it ever with the schedule that they have. So I want Ricky Collins to get a full quarter at least in next week's game against Colgate just to see what he looks like in a game situation.
We remember the quarterback conversation before the season. Ricky Collins thought he was the starter.
Yeah.
Going into the year, now he's not. Steve Angeli has the reins. And so I somewhat agree. Giving him a quarter sounds a bit awkward in a way, maybe. Yeah. But listen, he came to Syracuse thinking he was going to be the starting quarterback. And I think it's definitely, a conversation to be had. And you're right. Colgate's really that last option.
I mean, when else are you
going
to do it? You're not going to do it against Clemson.
Yep.
Like, any time beyond the Colgate game, if you want to make a change at quarterback, you're going to be throwing a guy who has really no collegiate experience
straight into the fire.
Yeah. And I do not think that's a recipe for success. I don't think it harms you at all to just try it out next week and see what happens. All right, that'll do it for us on the double overtime. Our next football broadcast is the aforementioned Colgate game. That's Friday the 12th. Next Friday, it's a 7 o'clock game on the air on WAER at 6:30 for McClure Remodeling Countdown to kick off. And then the double overtime goes up until midnight. Maybe they'll be talking some Ricky Collins on that double overtime. We will just have to wait to find out. So Friday is the next Syracuse football game, and our next broadcast. We have to hand out some thank yous as well. Our producer, John Baccio, our engineer, Jared Valentin, our reporter, Dan Papillo, for joining us, and our WAER Sports Talk desk making it happen behind the scenes, Jack DiNapoli, Josh Radjanov, and Josh Rothert. For now, for the double overtime, Milo Hoffman and Jake Klein saying so long.